Hello there, this is a quick video to remind the world that I have made an astonishing discovery regarding a book that was written nearly 200 years ago by Mary Shelley called The Last Man. And this is in relation to the outbreak of coronavirus in China and the recent developments regarding the spread of the disease around the world at warp speed that we are seeing at the moment. And I read this book about a year ago, so it's fairly fresh in my mind, which might explain why I was able to make this connection in my head when I saw the news, when I saw and heard all the news coming out of China and the rest of the world about the coronavirus. I was able to make that connection to The Last Man in my book because it was so fresh in my mind. And I'm very clearly not the only person in the world to have done this so far. I'm sure a lot of people are talking about this book at the moment, but what people have not realised at the moment is how accurate the descriptions are. Because I was motivated, given that alarm bells were ringing in my head, was spurred to pick up the book and start reading some of the chapters again. And what I found was nothing short of amazing. Quite literally, word for word descriptions of what's happening in China at this present moment and the rest of the world, all to the letter, written almost 200 years ago, so accurately that it is nothing short of totally mind-blowing. And not just mind-blowing, I mean, once you look deeply at this evidence and you really do, as I say, study it, and then you turn and look at what's happening in China and study the real situation there. And of course, I'm not talking about state-sanctioned media bullshit. I'm talking about the real stories, the real news stories coming from underground news stations and local people. And if you investigate these stories and then look at this and match it with this, you realise that the similarities are so stunning, so accurate. I think it would be hard for anyone to deny it, or impossible for anyone to deny it. And at the same time, they would also have to admit that this book, therefore, acts as potentially a very valuable tool that could help us navigate out of an extremely difficult situation. I mean, there's two sides. It's a mixed blessing that I'm referring to here. I mean, one, yes, it's a miraculous discovery. Yes, it's genuine. Yes, it's completely honest. And perhaps for that reason, it will be shunned and it will be laughed at, like all truthful things in life, and regarded as some kind of strange conspiracy. But as I say, this is only possible from people that have not really examined the evidence. And let's face it, there is a lot of lazy people out there, and people who can't really be bothered to read books and can't really be bothered to listen to the news. And I'm sure a lot of people can sit back and speculate and criticise things that they quite honestly don't know bugger all about. And I therefore encourage you just to ignore these people and just have a look at the evidence for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Because as I say, I have passed on a lot of these, or the core of these discoveries to UK news media. That was yesterday, only to be met by a blank response as usual, which I was not wholly surprised by, given the amount of bullshit that the media are spewing out anyway at the moment regarding the coronavirus. So quite literally anything honest, they just seem to ignore just at face value without even looking any further into it. But of course, I had a slightly tense conversation with the lady on the telephone because, yes, I mean, they can say, oh, well, anyone who can read this and realises that, oh my God, this is a stunningly accurate prediction, will potentially be scared by that, because then they can, all they have to do is basically read on a little bit in the book and they can find out what's going to be happening in June and what's going to be happening in November and what's going to be happening next year. Basically, they can use this as a tool to look into the future. And of course, as a person who's read this book, I can tell you that the future at the moment does not look very bright. And I suppose, yes, you could be held guilty of fear-mongering, spreading terror, which Okay, I mean, there's a loose argument for that, but on the flip side, we have to remember that if you're just going to ignore truth and ignore an accurate prediction like this, what could be a very important omen and a very strong indication or critical, vital tool to navigate out of a very dangerous situation that, quite honestly, we do not have any tools, to help us with at the moment. Regarding any kind of giving us, any kind of indication of what lies ahead and how to avoid it, then we could pay an absolutely massive price for that. In other words, just to try and ignore the truth and say, oh, well, this is fear mongering, merely because it's so stunningly accurate and frightening, could result in a much, much, much bigger price, in that we just put that, we're just, okay, we're too spineless to look at it, we're too dishonest and, to basically entertain the truth, and, the next thing we're going to do is just walk off the edge of a cliff, because quite literally, as I say, throwing away a tool that could help us navigate out of a very dangerous situation can mean only one thing, ladies and gentlemen: millions of lives will be lost. And I'll say that again, millions of lives can potentially and will potentially be lost if we ignore this information. So I think on that note, I better wind up this video and encourage everybody out there to please go and do your own research. Please read the book for yourself. Please investigate some genuine underground news sources that are trying and doing their best to let the world know what is happening in reality in China and other parts of the world. Now this disease has spread to other countries like Malaysia, like Japan, like America, and quite clearly incubating and moving at warp speed and spreading faster than you can possibly imagine. So we are in the throes of a very awkward situation and a very unusual, frightening situation, for which obviously very clearly we are going to need some kind of a torch, and we are going to need some kind of navigation equipment, and this, ladies and gentlemen, at the moment is the best thing we have, I think. And at the moment I believe I am the first person in the world to make or to discover the sentences and phrases in the book that are so relevant to what is happening and the developments happening in the world at the moment regarding the spread of this disease. So without further ado, I say thank you for watching, and see you in another video very soon.